Welcome to the Daily Signal. I'm Daniel Davis, and today I have the pleasure of being joined by the President-elect of El Salvador, Nayib Bukele. Mr. President-elect, thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me, and thank you for the Heritage Foundation and the people that are watching us.
Now, you were elected in February in an overwhelming vote, and it was the first time, I believe, in the last 20, 30 years that a third-party candidate had been elected president in El Salvador. You're going to start your 5-year term in June. And now you're here in Washington. What are some ways that you hope to build the US-El Salvador relationship?
The U.S. and El Salvador has had a relationship for over 100 years. It has been a great relationship, and El Salvador has been an ally of the United States like forever. We have a third of our population lives here. We use the U.S. dollar as our currency. 80% of our exports come to the United States. 80% of our imports come from the United States. But the fact is that the last 10 years we had a government that has been eroding the relationship with the United States, siding with Venezuela, siding with Nicaragua, the international organisms. And what happened is that we have been eroding our relationship with our greatest ally, our greatest friend, and that it just doesn't make sense. So that actually gives us an opportunity to fix that relationship. It's a change of government, and it's not only a change of government, but also a change of era for El Salvador. Because after the civil war in the we had a civil war in the 80s that ended in 1992. But after the peace accords were signed, the two sides of the war still continue to govern the country. Arena, the one side, and the former guerrilla, the FMLN, on the other side, they go on and continue to rule the country for the next 27 years. They're still in government right now. They're leaving in May 31st. So in June 1st, we're not only a new government's coming in, but also a new era for El Salvador is coming in, because we're turning the page on the post-war era. The Salvadorans decided overwhelmingly on February 3rd that they want the post-war era to end. And now we have a clean slate. We have a clean page to write on, and we're not abide by the speeches of the 80s. We're not abide by the ideologies of the 80s, by the fight of the 80s, but a new generation that wants to build something with. We don't need to invent the recipes. The recipes are there. You have the United States is an example of that. So we just want to build a country that works with common sense solutions and doing the common sense things, like being in Washington and reaching out to our friends. And we just want to do the common sense things, and we know that as a result we will have prosperity for our people, and our people are happy and are eager to do that, and they're willing to work on that. So it's obvious it's going to work, because everybody is on board, and we're trying to send the right signals, and the right signals are being received by the right people and by the right countries. And I think that at the end of the line, we'll have prosperity in El Salvador, and that's only not good for El Salvador, but it's also good for the other countries that could see El Salvador as an example of how an underdeveloped country can have progress and can have an economic growth and can solve its problems by doing the right things and the common sense things.
Well, you mentioned that a third of Salvadorians live right here in the United States.
Yes.
We also continue to have more migrants arriving at the U.S. border. But you mentioned in your speech at Heritage that you plan to end all, I think your words, forceful immigration
Yes. to
the United States in the next 5 years. What key steps do you plan to take to achieve that?
Forceful immigration, which is 95% of our immigration. I mean, you have other types of immigration, right? Like professional immigration, but you have forceful immigration. It means when you have immigration caused by other factors, like, for example, lack of opportunities or violence, or both of them, or both of those factors. This is really shameful for our country. I mean, it should be really shameful. When we talk about, in the immigration debate, we always talk about the borders. We always talk about the countries that get the influx of immigrants, but we seldomly speak about what are we doing in our country for the people not fleeing. I mean, people are not fleeing the States, right? Why people are fleeing our country? I mean, we should be doing things really bad for our own people wanting to flee our country. So we want to end that. I mean, it's not a favor to the United States. It's just a matter of common sense that our country has to provide the opportunities and the security for people to want to stay in their country. for us, it's not cheap either to be exporting our young population, our population that is willing to work, that is willing to work really hard to for their families. So I mean, we have a demographic bonus. We have a huge demographic bonus because we have a huge young population, and that should be by any observation, that should be the best thing a country may have, and we're expelling them like we want to export people, and that shouldn't be an industry. I mean, exporting people to get remittances, that's the worst thing a country can do, expelling its own population. So we want to change that, and the way to change that is I mean, it's a gigantic job, but it's actually really simple, in the way that it's a common sense thing, that you have to provide opportunities, you have to provide jobs, and you have to provide security. Now, someone may say, "Hey, yeah, really, that sounds good, but how do you provide security, right?" Well, you have to fight the gangs in El Salvador. A gang member makes average $300 a month. So they don't make a huge income. So of course, the state may come and provide better opportunities for them: education, scholarship, sports, culture, art, and we can allure the young people to go into the right path and not into the wrong path. And we can fight, the gangs are not sophisticated. They're not like the big drug cartels. They're not sophisticated. So we can fight them, I mean, the straightforward, with technology, with things that we don't have, because the crooks have been stealing the money for the last 40 years. So let's invest the money that the people are paying in taxes in services to the people. And one of the best services we can provide to the people, to companies, to international investors, to tourists, for tourism to grow, it's investing in making our country safe. And then when you Google El Salvador, you will not find gangs, corruption, immigration, caravans, but you will find economic growth, tourism, surfing beaches. They are battling corruption. So you will find the right ways, and that will allure people to come in, to invest, to Salvadorans to go back to their country, retirees to want to retire in El Salvador because we have a nice weather, because we have beautiful beaches, because we have beautiful places to go, because we have summer all year long. So, but we have to do the right things to change the country. They seem gigantic, but at the same time, it's really simple. I mean, if you could define it in a minute, it should be simple to do it. And we haven't done it because the previous administration and the current administration has been focusing on stealing money and haven't been focusing on giving a vision to our country and put the money where it should be and put the country in the right path.
Yeah, I want to ask you about that. One of the major issues in your election was corruption.
Yeah.
What are some specific ways that's been happening, and what are key steps you plan to bring reform and accountability to government?
Yes, well, you said it. You have to bring reform and accountability. In the first part, we have to reform some laws, and we have to set the example. Like the president of Mexico just said, you cannot clean the stairs from the bottom up. You have to clean the stairs from up down. So you have to start with leading with the example. I mean, if the president is stealing money, well, all of his cabinet will do the same. But if the president is not stealing money and he tries to choose, and I say try because out of 3,000 people, they might be a crook, right? But but if you choose the right people, and then you put in place the checks and balances that will control when one of those 3,000 confident posts you have, if they stray, well, somebody will catch them, and someone will turn it to the justice system and to the authorities and be punished for his crimes. Corruption will stop. And one of the things that will do it fast is we have called for international commission led by the OAS or by the UN. Both organizations are interested in it. Dr. Almagro, the Secretary General of the OAS, just said we're all in that commission. And an international commission has the benefit, I don't want to sound redundant, but it has the benefit that it's international. So they don't have the influence of the internal powers or the internal mafias. And you will have an international commission that is totally independent, that is going after the crooks, not only the ones in the past, but also the ones in the present and the ones in the future. Somebody asked me in the audience that what would I do with the crooks in the opposition? And I said, not only the crooks in the opposition, in our own party, if there's somebody stealing money, he will have to pay for what he has done. And that will also dissuade some people of doing bad things, because they will they will fear the consequences.
Well, earlier you mentioned the problem of gangs, and it's a problem we have here in the United States.
Yes.
MS13 is a challenge. That gang has roots in El Salvador, but I want to ask you how that gang has affected the people in El Salvador, and what are some of the key steps that you plan to take to really push back on the gangs?
Gangs are really bad. They are responsible of 80% of our homicides. They extort money out of poor people. They have control of whole communities controlled by gangs, where if you want to sell something, you have to pay the gang. They are a quasi-state because they function like they collect taxes, they provide security, which means I'm not going to kill you, right?
Right.
But the fact is that these organizations, they have to end. We have to end these organizations, and the right way to do it is in a three-step. First, we have to compete to get the young people. They're recruiting 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds. Those kids, you can't compete them. If you get them, those kids will go in the right way with scholarship, with education, with sports, with programs. You can get those kids. You have the other, which are graduated criminals. I mean, you cannot fix them. You have to combat them. But you can do it with technology. You can do it by putting the money in people and combating them. In El Salvador, we don't even have a forensic lab. We're just gonna build the first one. But if you go to a crime scene, you can have the fingerprints, you can have DNA, you can have the bullet, the gun, and a letter from the killer saying I killed this guy, and they wouldn't even know who wrote the letter because they don't have calligraphers to match the letters. So the fact is that we don't even have the common things police departments in the United States have. So how can we fight the gangs if you're not acquiring the technology and the equipment and the tools that our police, our men and women in the police need to fight the gangs? The good thing, or the opportunity, not the good thing, the opportunity is that the gangs are not sophisticated. I mean, they're very low in sophistication. They're not like the drug cartels that they have. They have the submarines. No, they're
Right.
very low sophisticated, and they are very low in income. So if we cut their income, it's very easy. I just when I was mayor of San Salvador, we just did a plan in the historic downtown district, and we turned the most dangerous area in the country in the most touristic area in the country. So you can do it in small, you can scale it in big. And the third, that's the second one, combat them. And the third one is reinsertion in the jail system. Right now in our jail system, we have, they're practically universities of crime. They go inside because they've stolen the chicken, and then they graduate from, they order homicides and extort people from the jails because the whole ambient of the jail does that.
Right.
But if you turn jails into correctional facilities that actually you are trying to correct people, then a big chunk of those criminals that are getting out because their sentences are ending, you will get a huge chunk of them in the right path. And if they go astray, well, you get them back and you send them back to jail. But you need the system to work. It is not, I mean, we're not inventing hot water. It's just doing the right things that common sense law enforcement has to do. We have to fix our social fabric so kids don't feel the necessity to go to a gang. And we have to fix our jail system.
Well, lastly, I want to ask you about your election. Last month, as we mentioned, you were elected by wide margins, a third-party candidate, and you've got a huge social media following as well. I understand you're 37 years old, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what do you think most resonated with your campaign with the people?
I think it was a couple of different factors. One of them, I was mayor of the capital, San Salvador, and when we ended our term, we ended with an 84% approval rating. So it was people like our promises, but also people know that we will keep our word and our promises because we have done that already. That's for one. The second is I think we connect better with most of the people that are. Most of the people are watching their phones more time than are watching their TVs.
Right.
So it's good to have ads on TV, but it's better to connect people via social network in our times.
Right.
And the other thing is that I think were also fed up of the status quo of the two-party system that has been the crooks on one side and the crooks on the other side, that has been ripping off and stealing the people's money. And you will see former presidents with 300 million, 400 million dollars from the public money, and the country with no medicine, with schools in with no roofs, with schools. We have 80% of our schools that don't have internet access. I mean, people were fed up of that. So people wanted a change. And right now, we had a huge electorate. We won in the 14 departments. We won in the 59 of the 60 most important cities. We won in 200 of the 262 cities in the country. We won in every sector, in every niche. But right now, that transforms into a responsibility, because the expectations are so high that if we don't fulfill those expectations, it could be really bad. So we have to fulfill or exceed the expectations that people have in us.
Well, President-elect Nayib Bukele, we really appreciate you taking the time to join us at the Daily Signal, and we hope you'll join us next time.